Europe and parts of North America are literally on fire right now. London hit 35 degrees Celsius in May, a record that had never been broken in recorded history. France hit 37, Spain topped 38, and the heat dome that did it is still sitting over the continent as we record this, with forecasters calling it 1 in 1,000. And every single major news outlet, every one, has the same explanation ready to go. Climate change, CO2 emissions, human activity. Full stop, end of conversation. But here's what none of them mentioned. Not one. In January 2026, Earth's magnetic North Pole officially crossed into the Russian hemisphere for the first time in recorded history. And it has been moving at 50 to 60 kilometers per year, accelerating for the past 3 decades. I'm not saying that's the whole story, but I'm asking, why is nobody asking the question? Seems kind of like a big deal, no? Let's be fair to the mainstream explanation first, because we always do that here. The official story goes like this. Greenhouse gas emissions, primarily CO2 from burning fossil fuels, have trapped heat in the atmosphere. The planet has warmed by about 1.1 degrees Celsius over the past 50 years, and that warming, according to climatologists, is making extreme heat events more frequent, more intense, and longer lasting. The specific mechanism for this week's European disaster is called a heat dome. It's a high-pressure system that parks over a region and acts like a lid on a pot. Hot air from the Sahara gets pulled north. The pressure system traps it, and temperatures climb day after day with no relief. Dr. Frederica Otto from Imperial College London said, and I'm quoting here, "This record-breaking heat has the fingerprints of climate change all over it." The World Weather Attribution Network, a group that specializes in real-time climate attribution, published an analysis saying this heat wave would have been virtually impossible just a few decades ago. That's the official story. Those are real scientists. That data is real. We're not dismissing any of it. But here's what we are asking. Is CO2 the only explanation? Or is it the only explanation we're allowed to talk about? Point 1. The pole has moved further and faster than at any point in recorded human history. In 1900, magnetic north was sitting comfortably over northern Canada. By 2000, it had moved significantly. By 2019, it was moving so fast that the World Magnetic Model, the international navigation standard used by everything from your phone's compass to military systems, had to be updated ahead of schedule for the first time ever. In January 2026, geophysical models confirmed the pole had officially crossed into the Russian hemisphere. It has moved more than 2,300 kilometers since 1990. Published peer-reviewed research confirms that this rapid and consistent pole shift is affecting the magnetic field configuration and spatial gradients in the northern mid-high latitude regions. Those are the northern mid-high latitude regions. You know, like Europe. Point 2. The jet stream is behaving in ways that nobody fully understands. The jet stream is the fast-moving river of air high in the atmosphere that essentially acts as a traffic controller for weather systems across the northern hemisphere. It determines where heat goes, where storms go, and where high-pressure systems park. And in the last decade, it has been doing something unusual. It's getting wavier, more meandering, stalling in positions that cause extreme weather to persist for longer than it historically would. Peer-reviewed research published in Nature's Scientific Reports found, and this is significant, that solar proton events directly cause a poleward shift of the polar jet stream. that the long chain effects of solar activity on Earth's magnetosphere reach all the way down into lower atmospheric circulation. That's not fringe science. That's nature. That's peer review. That's the mechanism by which a changing magnetic field, one experiencing the most dramatic pole shift in recorded history, could plausibly affect the very atmospheric systems driving these heat domes. Point 3. We have been here before, and the mainstream explanation was incomplete then too. A landmark study published in the journal Science examined a geomagnetic event called the Laschamps Excursion, a period approximately 42,000 years ago when Earth's magnetic field weakened dramatically. The researchers found evidence of a major global environmental crisis coinciding with that weakening: climate shifts, species extinctions, atmospheric changes. The study suggested the geomagnetic event played a significant role. Now that specific study has been debated. Other researchers pushed back. Science does that. It argues, it revises, it refines. That's how it's supposed to work. But here's the thing. The debate itself was significant, because what it told us is that there is a legitimate, ongoing, peer-reviewed scientific conversation about whether geomagnetic changes affect Earth's climate and weather systems. That conversation exists. It's in the journals. It's being conducted by credentialed researchers, and it is completely absent from every single news report about the European heat dome. Point 4. The funding question. This one doesn't require peer review. It just requires following the money. The overwhelming majority of climate research funding flows towards CO2-based explanations. That is not a conspiracy. That is the documented reality of how research grants are structured, how IPCC reports are commissioned, and how scientific careers are built in this field. When an institution's grant cycle, career trajectory, and public credibility depend on a particular framework being correct, how likely is that institution to fund research that seriously examines an alternative framework? That's not a gotcha. That's just incentives. The same incentive structure that shapes every industry, every institution, every human enterprise. We're not saying the researchers are lying. We're saying the system of what gets studied and what doesn't is not neutral. So here's where we land. Is CO2 contributing to what we're seeing in Europe right now? The evidence suggests it probably is. We're not here to tell you otherwise. But is it the complete explanation? Is it the only driver? Is a magnetic pole undergoing the fastest positional shift in recorded history, one that peer-reviewed science acknowledges affects atmospheric systems? Is that irrelevant? Because if it's not irrelevant, if the pole shift is even a contributing factor, then the policy response changes, the investment priorities change, the timeline changes, the entire conversation changes. And that conversation is not happening. Not in the newspapers, not on the networks, not in the press conferences where climatologists field questions from journalists who have already written their headlines. We're not asking you to reject climate science. We're asking you to demand the complete science, because the narrative you're being given might be part of the truth, but part of the truth, when it's presented as the whole truth, is its own kind of problem. Europe and the world is burning. That is real. The question of why it's burning, the full, complete, uncensored answer to that question is what F the narrative is here to find. If you think the whole story matters, not just the approved version, hit subscribe. We're just getting started. And tell us in the comments, what do you think is really driving what's happening right now? Because here's the thing about the truth. They can suppress it, They can ignore it. They can fund around it. But they can't unask the question. That's what we're here for. F the Narrative, Episode 1 complete. See you next week.